And it's Ken Kraetzer for CaMMVetsMedia and Army Football Huddle. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. And tonight we have a gathering to talk about Army's win over Coastal Carolina at home on Senior Day with a new old offense broken out and getting set to play Navy in just 2.5 weeks. One of the great sporting events in all of college football and really in America. And with us today, we have calling in from Florida, Richard Miller. How are you?
I'm great, Ken. Great even better after an Army win.
Absolutely. And calling in from South Jersey, we've got from the class of '92, Steve Shalou.
Good evening, everybody.
Good to see you, Steve. And calling in from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, we've got Colonel Sam Houston from the class of '87.
Hey, Ken. Hello, everybody, and apologize for my absence the last 1 or 2 weeks. This past week, I actually just totally forgot I was traveling for work. But
we're going to give you a chance to talk about the Air Force game, Sam. We can't let that go by. A win over Air Force for you to comment on. But let's say hello to Jack McGuirk calling in from Pelham, my colleague from our weekly CaMMVets radio show. Jack, how are you?
Doing pretty well. You know, it's a good week when you have 3 straight Army wins and 3 straight Air Force losses.
Hey, we're set. We're teeing it up for Sam. I just want to start by saying happy Thanksgiving to all U.S. military personnel, especially those serving overseas who may follow us. We know the Navy's got 2 carrier task force in the Middle East, and the Air Force has got operations, and the Army's got soldiers deployed. And how many countries do you expect? Over 100? Probably 100 countries U.S. Army is deployed in at any given time. We always hear that, and we want to shout out to them. The Coast Guard, we know, is out in the Mediterranean, all over the Pacific, and the U.S. Marine Corps is out serving in many places around the world and the U.S. And we know not everybody gets home for holidays, even if you are located in the domestic U.S. So we just want to say thank you for what you do. Glad you're able to follow us, and happy Thanksgiving. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the win over Coastal Carolina, but we're going to give Sam Houston the opening shot tonight on the win over Air Force, 23-3. A game Army was a 17-point underdog. Sam, what did you see happen that gave Army the chance for a big win?
I think what I saw the most, first off, it was one of the best games of the Monken era that I've attended. And I was so glad to be in Denver. I was so glad that it was at Mile High Stadium, because what that meant was the venue offered more fans to actually be in the stands to see Army put a blue-collar beat down on those preppy folks from Air Force. And believe me, Air Force really did show up overconfident and really believing that Army was just going to roll over and play according to what their record was coming into the game. The only thing that went wrong was that Army didn't get the script. And so Army showed up to play. And defensively, that was the most complete game Army has played this entire season. They literally got into Air Force's head, especially the Air Force quarterback. He was completely rattled by the end of the third quarter, and it resulted in him finally being yanked with just a few minutes left in the game. I don't want to put it this way, because I really believed coming into the game that Air Force was a legit contender. I really did believe before the Army game that Air Force had an opportunity to possibly run the table this season, to play in the New Year's Bowl. But what actually happened was Army rolled into town and I think exposed Air Force to be not quite the team that they thought they were. And they were more of a product of what their schedule had been leading up to the Army game, because Air Force has literally been in a stink ever since that Army game. And I got to be honest, I personally was hoping that Air Force would run the table after the Army game so they could look at the season and realize they did not win the Commander-in-Chief trophy, and they had one loss on their record, and that one loss was Army. But the last two games have really shown that Air Force has been, I don't know if their confidence was shaken. I know they've had some injuries. They've done some substitutions on offense, but the thing is I think that this is I think that this is sweet karma that has come around for the entire COVID year, where Air Force allowed all of those players to sit out an entire semester of school just so they could have an extra season of eligibility. Because this is the last season of those COVID players having an opportunity to play for Air Force. And if you looked at the Air Force roster on the starting roster on offense and defense for that game, they were dominated by firsties and people like Kenneman, who Kenneman has been playing since I think 2019. And Air Force really did believe that they were going to assemble a group of firsties in the Zumi uniform that was going to be able to be the best Zumi team they'd ever fielded ever. And Army, thankfully, was the team that basically tumbled the apple cart and spilled it all over the place and ruined their perfect season. And again, started the slump that they're currently in, because they went from having one of the nation's longest winning streaks to a 3-game losing streak now. So, so be it. And they're not going to get the Commander-in-Chief trophy outright. And of course, when Army rolls into Foxborough in a couple of weeks and puts the beat down on Navy, Air Force is going to see that beautiful trophy, as Jeff Monken called the greatest trophy in college sports. It's going to go back to West Point where it belongs.
Okay. We knew you would not fail to deliver in your analysis of Air Force football. Now, really an interesting game at Mikey Stadium, Senior Day on Saturday. Coastal Carolina came in 7-3, and a team that had beaten Army in the opening game a year ago down in Myrtle Beach. And what happened? Army changed the offense. They went back to the old offense. And what a surprise that was. We had seen the pitch play working in the Holy Cross game, but this was something different. Army had the quarterback Bryson Daly under center virtually the whole game, and they reinstituted the fullback. Got their money's worth out of Jacoby Buchanan and Tyson Riley. And the offensive line seemed rejuvenated by all that. Yeah. Steve, what was your thought about Army going back to the future with the old offense?
Well, I mean, it was a sight to behold. We were on the attack again. We were not letting time pass by between the mesh and the 5 yards and everything else. We were downhill on the attack. Fullbacks were back engaged. It was brilliant. Now, from the insider view, I heard that they were just going to come out to give a look and not really stick with it as much as they did. But how could you go away from what they were doing at that point? They had Coastal Carolina on their heels. We attempted 2 passes all day long. And I happened to be sitting next to a Coastal Carolina fan that was a business contact of a friend of mine. And he was pointing at the passing yards, and I was pointing at the time of possession. And I leaned over to him and said, "We're an anaconda, and we're going to squeeze the life out of you, and it's happening slowly, and there's nothing you can do about it." And I said, "You're going to have maybe 6 series this game." And that quarterback right now is sitting there wondering and thinking, and it came down to the second half. I said, "You're going to have 2 more series tops, and you're down by 14 points. So you have to be perfect on both of those just to try to tie this game, and that's what we do to you." And that's the Army way. And that's what we did. And it's the first time I've seen that in a long time. And it was a long time into last year either. So we were, and I think the more that we ran the fullback, the hungrier the line got, and they got fired up. And there were some runs from, that we got 10 yards after the hit, and it was turned into a rugby scrum, and there was blood everywhere, and we tasted it, and we loved it, and we attacked. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. As a former Army lineman, that was football.
I think you enjoyed it. I think you enjoyed watching that, Steve. I think all of us did.
Yeah.
Army 365 yards rushing, yards passing 0. That's pure Army football. Jacoby Buchanan had 60 yards, 5 yards a carry. Tyson Riley at 112 yards, 9.3 yards a carry. John Marshall, 64 yards and a touchdown, 9.1 yards a carry, catching quite a number of the pitch plays from Bryson Daly. And, I think one thing to note was that Coastal Carolina got a pretty good game out of their quarterback, Jarrett Guest, who was 26 of 36, 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he was a little tougher in the Army defense to stop. He was playing in place of Bryson McCall, their veteran, 88 touchdown, 10,000-yard throwing quarterback. Hey, let's get Jack. What's your thought on the game?
Well, as you were saying, it was like an old-fashioned ground and pound Army offense. When you look at some of the stats, the one that jumped out at me was pointed out was Army having 365 yards total offense, all rushing. 0 passing yards. It was 365 on 62 attempts. And of course, Tyson Riley, big game, 112 yards rushing. Bryson Daly, 94 yards rushing. And by the way, Army is now in senior day games up at Mikey Stadium in the Jeff Monken era. They're 9-1 in those games. And also in games in the Jeff Monken era where they where they did not complete a single pass, they're 9-1. So maybe it's not such a bad thing that they didn't have any passing. But
when Army has to pass the ball a lot, it's usually because they're behind. And so Army kept control of the game. Challenge was that Coastal Carolina kept making some big plays, and they got the 59-yard pass play from Jarrett Guest to Jared Brown, and then later on they got the 31-yard touchdown pass from Guest to Tucker, and then later in the game, the fourth quarter, a 31-yard pass from Guest to Pickney. Fortunately, Army was able to get back the onside kick attempt by Tyrell Robinson, who actually had fumbled the prior series, allowing Coastal to get the ball back. Was that a bit of a concern that the defense was kind of in bend but don't break, but gave up a couple of big plays?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, that offense was prolific last year, and they've got athletes all around that place. And they're going to score points. They're going to score points off of any defense. I think we did a good job of containing and keeping that ball inside and up front. So I think pretty much of all aspects of that game was exciting for that, for sure.
I agree.
Very good. Now, Richard, what was your view watching the game from Florida?
Well, my view of watching the game from Florida was, I think it was definitely a game which I would think, again, obviously a very, close game, a very, I think, exciting game, I think, again, a very, important win for Army because of also the fact that they have, the Army Navy game coming up in also a couple of weeks. My view, I think, again, a close game, also, again, a third win in a row Also, again, a rebound from the nice win from the Holy Cross game. Being able to win these, I think, again, close games. Now, like 17-14 and then 28-21, those are definitely key. Even
Okay.
if I think
Okay.
they're not going to be bowl eligible, you need to win important games to have the kind of confidence that an Army team needs to have, especially going into a game against Navy.
Richard, the question of the day is, what jersey are you wearing tonight? It looks like a red Giants jersey. Who's that? Or is that a Tampa, the Buccaneer?
San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, 49ers. That's right. You're a 49ers.
I was yeah.
Mhm.
San Francisco 49ers.
Okay, very good. Well, let's see. The question, I actually talked with Drew Thatcher a little bit, said hello up at the office there yesterday. Apparently, they gave the play calling to Cade Woolley, who is the
Cody Worley.
Cody Worley, who is the quarterbacks coach, and whatever they did was working. How do you see that moving forward? It seems like they did this whole thing somewhat on the fly last week. What was your thought on how this evolves and how it affects the coaching on offense? Steve, you want to start?
Yeah, here are my thoughts, and I've thought a lot about it up to this point. The beauty of this offense, the one that they ran on Saturday, and I think that's not too far from what Coach Monken envisioned long term for the Army team, is you've got a couple players that are really key. Tyson Riley being one of them, and Ajon Marshall being the other. Why are they key? Number one, Tyson Riley's been playing tight end for us for the last few games, but he also played inspired fullback play coming in there. Now, Ajon Marshall, sporadic this year, but he can play slot back, and he also can play wide receiver.
Sure.
So theoretically, we can be in the same offensive set with the same personnel and be in either our option shotgun, or we can be under center, which doesn't allow the defense to adjust. So we could run a series or two and never change our personnel and put Navy on their heels.
Because Coach Monk, if in the post-game press conference, Coach Monken spoke to that, and he said they had been practicing the new offense, the shotgun offense, all spring, all August, and he said they really, because the plays are different, you couldn't run both under center and shotgun, and he was pretty specific about that. And then, so I asked him, well, I mean, that sounds like a pretty big adjustment for Bryson Daly to make in 1 week. And Coach Monken said, yeah, and he did great. And then I said, it's a pretty big adjustment for your freshman center, Brady Small. And he said, yeah, Brady Small handled it very well. He said it's actually I think he said it was easier for the center, Brady Small, when it was in the shotgun. And then what is it? He has a bad wrist, on top of it.
With the center with a quarterback right behind you. And listen, Brady was a defensive lineman coming up to the prep school. So he just started snapping this year, and he didn't have any really opportunity to snap with somebody between his legs. And you got to think about your feet. You're not stepping back, you're stepping on people's toes. There's a lot that goes into being a center, reach blocking, and it's not easy. I mean, this kid has done amazing things, and our future is bright. I mean, if you think about fullback, running back, right out of New Jersey, Udon, another freshman. We've got a couple of freshmen that are quarterbacks that I like a lot, but this is Daly's team. Let's not even
absolutely
going into spring and going into next fall. Let's not shake up this apple cart, because he's the leader that we need. But I will tell you that it looks bright right up the middle for us. And, our linemen are thicker and they're heavier. And how are they going to get off the ball better? Because usually a little bit lighter, a little bit more athletic on the option, under quarterback is a little bit more advantageous for us. But, man, they came off the ball. So I think we can switch in between. The personnel matches up great. And we just gave the silent service corps a whole lot of stuff to think about come in their short week because they have SMU coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
So, good luck getting prepared for that. Now, but we have to think about, one of the things that we don't do well as a team, whether we're in this new option offense or the old one, is we just don't score points in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Something we have to get. Hey, buddy, that's something we have to get. We have to get better at. I mean, if we look at the stats, we're averaging 3.45 points per third quarter and 4.27 points per fourth quarter. We're about 7 points a half in the second half this entire season. And we've been shut out a lot in the second half. And the Navy game last year was another part of it. So we can concentrate on two offenses and all the rest of the stuff, but we need to concentrate on making those adjustments at half and coming out fast and finishing strong so that we can take that trophy that belongs to us back on the Hudson.
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah. So first, let me just say that I've been saying all season, even before the season started, when we were all abuzz about the new offense, I kept saying that I have to believe that triple option is still in the playbook. And it's only a matter of time before Monken's finally going to say, we're going to bring it out. And there's a number of times we've had to huddle where I said, I think a perfect adjustment that he could have made, like say, for instance, in the Syracuse game, was that if he had opened the second half by switching to under center triple option. And Monken actually validated in his halftime interview that, yes, this offense has still been in the playbook the whole season. And if you watch the Holy Cross game, they actually gave you a little taste because there were a couple of under center plays where they ran jet tosses from the triple option set. And so that was kind of like a validation, like, oh, hello, this offense is still in the playbook. And we're finally seeing a little crack in the ice, which is it's time to mix it up and see what we can do if we bring back what has been the bread and butter for the Monken era. And to Steve's point, we've got the biggest offensive line we've ever had. And I'm here to tell you that this past Saturday, I was texting Steve throughout the game. And all I could think of, I kept thinking of Steve because I was like, Steve has got to be like jumping out of his seat watching this offensive line because the offensive line is having an absolute blast. And it wasn't just because of the fact they were running triple option. It was because the type of blocking that they were doing as a result of the triple option play calling. They were running a bunch of traps. They were doing a bunch of attack blocking instead of zone read blocking. And at the end, right before the end of the third quarter, there were back-to-back runs where the ball carrier was essentially stopped at about 5 yards, and it turned into a scrum that turned a 5-yard carry into like a 15-yard gain. And one of the most beautiful sights that I saw in the entire game while I was watching was at the end of the third quarter, everybody, the offense ran to the sideline, and Mike Vitti was absolutely ecstatic. I thought he was about to start headbutting helmets again, like he did on another play last week. And I was totally fired up just for my foxhole position. Just watching this, it was so wonderful to see that the offense was not only moving the ball consistently, they were having fun doing it. And that's what is really key. When you know that you've got the defense on their heels and you're having fun as a team, just smashing them in the mouth every play and knowing they can't stop you, it doesn't get any better than that. And that's what Army had Coastal Carolina. That's the position Army had Coastal Carolina by the second half. That's the position they had them in. Another thing that happened was that at halftime, the Coastal Carolina coach got interviewed. And he said, yes, while we were in the locker room, we had an opportunity to make some adjustments. And he essentially alluded that he had some surprises for Army's triple option. The first time Army gets the ball, they just literally, Tyson Riley goes for 40-some yards. 4 plays later, Army's in the end zone. So whatever adjustment Coastal Carolina made, it didn't work. And
we talked about that with Coach Monk and how important it was to the offense to make a statement, get a score on the first drive of
It wasn't,
the second half.
yeah, it wasn't just that, Ken. Coastal got the ball to start the second half. What was most important was for the defense to get the ball back.
You're right.
And then
You're
for
right.
the offense to take advantage of that, and they did. Now, these are good things. I'm going to talk about some bad things real quick. Bad things are the penalties. We had some really bad penalties in this game. And these bad penalties kept Coastal Carolina drives alive. This has got to be worked on. There was a hands to the face call twice that kept a drive alive, kept two different drives alive. Now, fortunately, one of them actually ended in another 4-down series where Army got the ball back. Okay, those are bad things. They need to be fixed. The second bad thing is, to Steve's point, and that is in the second half. First off, let me just preface this by saying, I'm going to tell you how many points Army's offense actually scored. Army's offense scored 21 points. For the second game in a row, we got a gift from the special teams. And by the way, Army's got the best special teams coach in FBS football, bar none. And I really hope that we can keep him at West Point, because
he's not going anywhere.
he is the best special
He loves
teams
this coach.
coach in FBS. And we got another 7-point gift out of special teams for the second week in a row. There's the reason we won the game. Army had the ball twice in the fourth quarter, deep in Coastal Carolina territory. The first time they had it deep in Coastal Carolina territory, it was 4th and 1. And by the way, they got a bad spot. It should have been 4th and inches, but they got 4th and 1. I'm not a fan of the play call on that. I'd have just put Bryson Daly under center and got the fullback push and just pushed him across, or either that or just handed it to Jacoby Buchanan or Tyson Riley straight up the middle. I would not have done the quarterback zone read that they did, because it didn't work. The second was Tyrell Robinson's fumble. And I'm going to tell you, before you knock on Tyrell Robinson, I'm going to say he is not a kid who has had a problem with fumbling the ball, ever, never. And if you watch the replay, it was a freak fumble. Literally, when he was running in a crowd, he bumped into one of his own blockers. He wasn't expecting that. It knocked the ball out. I get it. You got to have the ball, 2 hands on the ball. But it was not a defense strip. He literally just bumped into a blocker and knocked the ball out. We lost the ball. It ended the drive. That's a minimum of 6 points we left on the field if we'd have had a couple of Moretsky field goals. And at most, it could have been an additional 14 points in the second quarter, not to mention the amount of time additionally we would have run off the clock just continuing those 2 drives if they had continued. They got to fix that. They got 1 game left. That's Navy. And I really think that Army's poised to put a real hurt on the Submariner team with the bathroom tile helmet design that they're going to play on December 9th.
Okay. They're going to represent the submarine force, a very distinguished group in the U.S. Navy. Now let me pose one question. I didn't have the heart to ask Coach Monken this in the post game Saturday, but at the beginning of the fourth quarter, Army had the ball on the Coastal Carolina 17. They do a no huddle, and Bryson Daly rushes right for 0 yards, doesn't get the touchdown. Many of us thought that would have been a good time to kick a field goal, take a Quinn Moretsky field goal and have a 3-score lead. At that, do you think that was? I know Coach Monken depends on the makes decisions based on the statistical analysis that they have available, but I would have been pretty comfortable if he'd gone to a 3-score lead at that point. What did you think, Steve or Sam?
Yeah,
or Jack?
I mean, statistical, and I know we have the analytic book and very familiar with that, but that's a melding of a large number of data points. And this year is it's a small number of data set that we're using. So I think we need to be more conservative on that, especially going as well as our field goal kicker has been doing this year, and the ability to go up 3 scores. I mentioned where I was sitting that I thought we should have kicked the field goal there. I thought it was important that we got the points, but there's a flow of the game. There's a confidence. And listen, there's a confidence that Coach Monken had in the offense that he hadn't had all season. This was like his 68 Chevelle running really well again, and he wanted to drive it, and I'm sure that's where he wanted to be on that. But you know, we're gonna win some, we're gonna lose some on play to plays, but as long as we win the game overall is what we're looking at. And the important thing out of this whole thing is, I can't understate enough the amount of confidence that this gives this offensive line going into the Navy game. The mindset is there now. It is a positive mindset going into this game. So I'm sure that practice this week is going to be spirited, has been spirited. The little break they'll get, and then they'll come back to work, because in the back of their mind, they're not wondering if we can do it. Mm-hmm. They took a quality Division I program and took them behind the shed and whooped them. Mm-hmm. And that is huge. Yep. That is huge going into this game.
Hey, Jack, why don't you give us a little rundown on Navy and Air Force? Navy won and Air Force took another defeat.
Yeah. I'll start off with Air Force. They lost. It was 31-27 loss to UNLV at Falcon Stadium in Colorado. Jensen Jones getting his first career start at quarterback for Air Force.
Wow.
Yeah, he rushed for 88 yards on the ground on 19 carries, had 2 goal line rushing touchdowns. And he through the air, he was 1 for 6 with 35 yards through the air. And Johnny Lee Elrich had a 55-yard touchdown run in the second quarter. And he had 10 carries on the day. Owen Burke had 65 yards and 13 carries as well. And Air Force had a 27-14 lead at halftime, but they were scoreless in the second half, which is pretty odd for Air Force. But
27-14 lead at the half at home.
Yeah.
Wow.
UNLV came back and scored 2 touchdowns. At one point, though, early in the fourth quarter, Air Force appeared to be getting the ball back, but UNLV faked a punt and converted on 4th and 11 with an 11-yard pass. Gutsy call by UNLV there. But ultimately, it was a tough loss for Air Force. And after starting the season 8-0, they've now lost 3 straight games. And on this Friday, November 24th, they have their last game of the regular season at Boise State. It's going to be on Friday.
That's a tough game for them.
Yeah, it is. And Navy also has a tough opponent coming up. But this week, they had a 10-0 shutout win over East Carolina. Navy actually now has 3 shutout wins this season, which is pretty surprising. Mm-hmm. But Navy came up with 4 turnovers on the day and didn't allow East Carolina to go over 100 yards of total offense until late in the fourth quarter. East Carolina had 189 yards total offense and only 34 yards rushing, by the way, for Carolina. So strong day for the Navy defense. Navy offense rushed for 174 yards on the day, led by Alex Texa, who ran for 94 yards and had the only touchdown of the game in the first quarter, 19-yard touchdown run for him. But the 10 total points in the game it's actually tied an AAC conference record for lowest scoring game. But Navy is now 5-5, and they can be bowl eligible next week. But they have a tough opponent, another AAC school, SMU. SMU is 9-2 overall this season, 7-0 in the conference. So if Navy pulls off a big upset, they could become bowl eligible next weekend.
Mm-hmm. But that's a big F.
Yeah.
F for them. That winning against SMU. That's down in Dallas?
Yeah.
And of course, SMU is going to the Big 12, return to Power 5 football for them. And Army will take their place in the American Conference. So, Richard, a couple of games last week that were big. Georgia over Tennessee, Ohio State over Michigan.
Let's see.
What else we got?
Ohio State, Minnesota.
38 to 10.
On the right week? Yeah.
No, Ohio State beat Minnesota, not Michigan.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Ohio State over Minnesota.
Let's see. Also, you had number 2 Ohio State 37 to 3 over Minnesota. Number 23, Oklahoma State 43-30 over Houston. Number 6, Oregon defeated Arizona State 49-13. Number 4, Florida State 58-13 over North Alabama. Number 9, Missouri 33-31 over Florida, and Kansas State over Kansas 31-27. And the new college football playoff rankings came out tonight. The Washington Huskies have moved up according to the. Do I have these rankings yet? Let's see. I think top 3 now in the college football playoff as of let's see, as of I think tonight it's Georgia number 1, Ohio State number 2, Michigan number 3, Washington number 4.
Okay. Very good. You look at it, interesting. Ole Miss over Louisiana Monroe, 35-3. Notre Dame big over Wake Forest, 45-7, and Tulane 24-8 over Florida Atlantic. Looking at this week coming up in college football, what do we got? Week 14. Actually, it's week 13. You got
Michigan,
TCU
Ohio
at
State,
Oklahoma.
Friday.
What else? You got Iowa at Nebraska, Tulane at Texas San Antonio, Penn State and Michigan State. These are Fridays, Saturdays. Ohio State versus Michigan, the game
Ooh,
they look forward to all year in the Big Ten. And Alabama, Auburn on Saturday also. Arizona State.
oh,
What else do you see there, Richard? Vanderbilt and Tennessee.
Let's see, what else do I see? Georgia and Georgia Tech at 7:30. Florida State, Florida.
Notre Dame will be out at Stanford. Georgia Tech. Some of the big. It's interesting. Some of the schools have real regional rivalries. North Carolina State, and others are just playing whoever they can get. Liberty playing Texas El Paso. BYU, Oklahoma State. So some big games on Saturday in college football that everybody looks forward to all year. Michigan, Ohio State, and Auburn, Alabama at the top of the list. Sam, is the Auburn, Alabama game a big one for you guys down in Huntsville?
I mean, that's the game of Alabama. But the truth is, I don't see where it's going to be a game this year. I mean, Auburn just got absolutely trounced by New Mexico State at home in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And there's some significance to this in that not only did Auburn get absolutely trounced, New Mexico State had never beaten an SEC opponent, I don't think. And if this is if this is the current state of Auburn football, then the Iron Bowl is not going to be really something worth watching this week. I mean, we'll watch it, obviously. People in Alabama will be watching it and bragging rights will be on the line, but I really think the Crimson Tide has got the game pretty much sewn up before they even walk on the field. And I don't want to compare this to the Army Air Force game because Air Force literally walked on the field overconfident, really believing that Army was going to roll over. I don't think that Nick Saban would ever allow his team to show up overconfident and thinking the other team is going to roll over. That they'll show up ready to just absolutely run the score up. So yeah, I'm sure the entire state of Alabama will shut down like it always does for the Iron Bowl, but unfortunately for the Auburn faithful, this is not going to be their year.
Okay, Jack, is there a favorite game that you're looking forward to in rivalry week?
Well, always keeping an eye on Notre Dame, but definitely this week I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Air Force and Boise State. If Air Force is going to end this losing streak or if it's going to continue. And also see what Navy can do against SMU.
Yeah. Steve, do you have a favorite?
I'm excited. I'm excited to see Michigan play Ohio State. I there's a lot of hype around it, and some interesting stats. I mean, the team who runs the ball the best generally wins that ball game, and Michigan is best suited to run the ball against Ohio State. Ohio State's got great wide receivers. I think the last seven games have been decided by the one that rushed the ball better versus throwing the ball better. So I think Michigan, and they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and gave them us against the world type of thing. So I'm excited about that. But the big question is, let's think a little bit about this. I mean, Navy has 5 wins. Army has 5 wins. So the winner of that game will be bowl eligible either way. So will they, and it's not looking like they're going to fill all the bowl slots. Are they going to leave one bowl slot open to the winner of the Army-Navy game?
Be interesting. I'm sure the Armed Forces Bowl would like to have the winner of the game.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if they'll do that because they're going to have to dip into a 5-win team to do that, but somebody's coming out of Army-Navy with a win. And if they don't beat SMU, it'll be 2 5 and 6 teams that technically could go to a bowl game.
Now, Steve, my understanding is because Army has 2 wins over football championship subdivision teams, it's not quite 5 wins. You're not taking that as legitimate.
You still went to the dance with the date.
Well, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully that technicality is not a factor. And yeah, that would be neat if you gave the winner of the Army-Navy game a slot in the Armed Forces Bowl down at TCU.
Yeah, one thing that I would say, Ken, on this particular subject. So last year we had the same conversation. Army walked into the Army-Navy game 5 and 6, and we were thinking that Army might have an opportunity if they got an NCAA waiver and won the, and which they did. They beat Navy, but unfortunately the last bowl slot was already filled, and so Army did not get to go bowling last season. Something to consider this season about the whole 2 wins over FCS is to take a look at the teams that Army did beat that are FBS. They beat UTSA. They beat Air Force that was 8-0 at the time and 25th in the country in the AP poll when Army beat them. And they just beat Coastal Carolina that was on a 5-game winning streak and a contender in the Sun Belt Conference. So the quality of the FBS opponents that Army has defeated this year is something to take into consideration. Just food for thought.
Yeah.
Well, I would accept that logic. And Army travels well to bowl games, brings a lot of fans. All you guys go, and many other alumni go to the game, especially if it's in Texas. So there's a lot of factors, and Army draws well on television, especially if they're coming off a win over Navy. I mean, Navy the 2. Richard, what's your favorite game this weekend on rivalry weekend in college football?
Oh, my favorite game in rivalry weekend, it without a doubt is Ohio State and Michigan. Big Ten matchup. Oh, and so much like memories. I mean, but this year it has obviously playoff implications for the college football playoff. I mean, there is really nothing. There's nothing better. Michigan, Ohio State. Everyone talks about. I mean, I personally think, I know a lot of people are saying this is the greatest, I think, college football rivalry. I know people are saying it's the greatest rivalry in all sports. I'm sorry. That is Yankees Red Sox. I tend to disagree on the fact that they say the Michigan Ohio State, but Michigan Ohio State greatest college football rivalry of all time. In all college football, not in all sports though.
Okay.
I have to tell you guys that my brother-in-law is a huge Michigan football fan, so I know he's going to be tuning into that game.
Well, Jack, let me ask you, what's the weather forecast for Ann Arbor, Michigan for this Saturday? Is it reasonable weather, or is it going to be snowy, cold, and run the fullback weather?
I'll have to look that up. Good question.
I hope snowy cold.
Because that makes a big difference. I mean, I remember that watching the Bill Parcells Giants. They always, when the weather turned cold in November and December, they just ran the ball. And Michigan's, got that advantage. I think they're a little better running team than maybe Ohio State is. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's do our first talk about. We used to say covering Army football, you couldn't ask about the coaches about the Navy game until the end of the last game of the year before the Navy game, and really there was so much talk about the Army offense, we didn't really get to Navy that much. Sam, what's your impression of Navy and how they're going to react to this Army team?
Yeah, I think SMU is going to say a lot about how this Navy team really has developed throughout the season, how they play SMU. You cannot discount the fact that Brian Newberry was brought to Navy in the first place as a defensive coordinator. And obviously he is a defense first coach, and it is not by coincidence that Navy has 3 shutouts this year. So let's not just assume that Navy is not going to play Army as strong as they possibly can. And their strength is clearly defense, and they're an opportunistic defense. They force a lot of turnovers. They're very good at stopping the run. So, this is a real challenge for Army. Whatever offense we intend to run in the Army-Navy game, the fact that Navy brings a defense to the field that is going to be that challenging and is used to playing service academy football to the field with a coach who has had success against Army and stopping Army offenses in the past. So it's a real mystery. It really is. I think Army has a lot of momentum right now. Army gets an extra week off. I really hope that that's not disruptive to momentum, but I like to believe that the firsties on the team right now, they remember what happened in 2021. And in 2021, they rolled into the Army-Navy game with 8 wins and 3 losses, and they had already beaten Air Force, and they laid a turd on the field at MetLife Stadium and let I think a 3 or 4 win Navy team beat them. And I got to think that the leadership in the locker room of the Army team this year, those seniors, those firsties, they are letting the entire team remember, fresh in their mind, and keeping them very vocal and fired up about the fact that there are no letdowns this year. There are no letdowns. They have unfinished business, and that unfinished business is the 2021 season that they want to roll in and finish by bringing home the Commander-in-Chief trophy. It's a trophy that they should have earned that year. And I really think that they attached some of 2021 to this season. Yes, they beat Navy last year, but last year was not for the Commander-in-Chief trophy. This year is. And the last time Army had an opportunity to do it, and they should have done it, they didn't do it. This year they're going to do it.
Okay. Jack, what do you think about looking at Navy this year?
I would say don't count them out. It could be a tough game for Army, but I do think it's a game that Army should win. I wish that, as Sam just brought up the MetLife game, I was just thinking of that, the MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, you were there.
I was there, yeah. That was a tough one. We all thought Army was going to win that one. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out too well.
Remember that game? You and I were down on the field for the national anthem and all the festivities.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ran up to the press box, took a few minutes. And just when we're getting out of the elevator, Christian Anderson ran, I don't know what it was, 60 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah.
But that would turn out to be their best offensive play of the day.
Mm-hmm. But
go ahead.
Yeah, it should be a good game for these two. Army, I don't know if you saw the Army uniforms they're going to be wearing for this game. They have the bulldog. I think it's a bulldog on their helmet.
Rocket Lamar.
I'd say, what is it? They're honoring the 3rd Infantry Division. And in particular, the units that invaded Baghdad.
Oh.
Sam, was that your unit? I know you were involved in
No. No, but the 3rd Infantry Division has a long and distinguished history. They're called the Rock of the Marne because in 1918, the 3rd Infantry Division was rushed into the defenses during the German offensive of 1918 and was credited with being the unit that put a stop to the German offensives along the Marne River. So they were called the Rock of the Marne. They're the division that Audie Murphy was a part of in World War II. And let's not forget that Audie Murphy is the most decorated combat soldier in the history of the United States Army, in the history of the United States military. And 3rd Infantry Division during the initial invasion of Iraq was famous for their thunder runs through Baghdad. Just when, Baghdad Bob and Saddam Hussein's regime were claiming that the coalition forces were nowhere near Baghdad, all of a sudden 3rd Infantry Division reinforced tank battalions were rolling through the streets of Baghdad on their thunder runs and proving otherwise. So yeah, it's a very distinguished, and their mascot is Rocky the Bulldog. And they're known for the dog-faced soldiers. So
Yeah.
it's a great unit, and I'm really glad that Army has selected the Rock of the Marne as their the unit that they are memorializing this year in their uniforms.
Yeah, they're mostly sand colored helmets, pants, and jerseys with black trim and numbers, and a lot of insignias for the 3rd Infantry Division. Very distinguished uniform. Jack, what is Navy dressing up for this year?
Navy, they're wearing it's to honor the, I guess, submarine fleet.
Submarine service, yeah, silent service.
Cam said they have their uniforms look like bathroom tiles, I guess.
The helmet.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what color the uniform was, whether they went with blue or, if you talk submarines are always black. And I wondered if they brought some black into their uniform this year, but well, I have to see it a little more closely. But that's better than what they've done in the past in some of their uniforms. But it also they're going to hand paint pictures of Virginia class submarines on their helmets.
Oh boy, finger painting by the Navy. I love it.
I think that's a little much. I'm curious how it holds up. The helmet played in a game. Steve, what do you think of that, of the uniform selection?
We're always biased about the uniforms. What I like about both uniforms are they're very clean, they're very classic. We always go after a story, something historical that's going to have some significance, and we feel that's better. Navy's going after themes of ships and NASA, and even though we had more astronauts than they did, it's an interesting approach. I mean, I think it's just good all the way around. I think the releases happened earlier this year. We got ours this morning. They did something really great at the academy. They came in, aerosoled these things in. I think it's just good for college football. I'm not a huge fan of our helmets this year. I'd like I'm still stuck, and I've got 7 of them from the Army Navy games up on my wall here, and I'm looking at them, and the 82nd helmet was just flat out cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, last year's helmet was great. The special operations helmet on 9/11 was amazing, and I love the 10th Mountain helmet. This one with the dog on it, we play Mississippi State. I'm not sure, but it's just not as tight as I've seen in the past. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll drop $1,500 at the end of the year and get myself one. It'll go up in the collection because I got more helmets than a Mission Barbecue. But it is it is what it is. I like the uniforms, the helmets. I thought we could be a little more creative.
Okay. I think the uniforms are good if you win.
Yeah.
If you win the game, everybody wants a jersey and buy the helmet, and you only feel good about it if you win the game.
Yeah.
And that's the key. But yeah, those are, I think, both are representing extraordinary units of the U.S. military, and certainly they said 159, I think, of the midshipmen are branching submarines. which is a special calling. I think we all would agree, and so important right now. And the Army's, recognizing one of its most famous units.
I mean, Submariners, I'm telling you, they're some of the brightest people on the face of the earth. And they're living in tight quarters and they're doing an incredible mission. I know a few Submariners and they're incredible people. So, I mean, I'm not going to fault them. I mean, Navy Nuke guys are bright and they're it's an incredible mission and not one that being 6'5" and, a burrito away from 300. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna tell you that I would be in one of those ships. So I got a lot of respect for the Navy and what they do, and it's gonna be a really good game this year. I think we're gonna be punching each other in the mouth all day long. It's gonna be incredible.
Okay, well, I got to tell a quick story. I was at the Army Navy Media Day. This has got to be 7 or 8 years ago, and I always interview the representative from USAA, the fine insurance company run by, it started for military officers. And so they introduced me to John Byrd, their military representative, Admiral John Byrd. So I asked Admiral Byrd, sir, what'd you do in the Navy? And he said, commanded a nuclear submarine. I think he used about that number of words. Then I asked him, oh, wow. And I said, what'd you do in the Navy after that? And he said, commanded the 5th Fleet. Using about that number of words. He didn't go into a lot of detail. but he had extraordinary positions. And we've seen him we've talked to him every year at the games, and he's an extraordinary officer and now business leader at USAA. So I guess we don't have a game is there a game you want to pick a score on at a rivalry week?
We got to go Michigan, Ohio State. I think that's the one to go with.
Okay, so let's let Richard, you wanted to watch that game. What do you think's going to happen?
What do I think is going to happen into that game? It's going to be an exciting game. I think Ohio State's going to really show up in this one. I'm going to go 37-21. I think Ohio State can really put it to Michigan.
They think Ohio State's going to win on the road in Ann Arbor. Okay.
Yeah.
Jack, did you check the weather report for Ann Arbor Saturday?
I did. It's going to be partly cloudy with a high of 37. So it's going to be a cold game.
Okay, but not snowing or raining. So that's probably the Buckeyes' advantage. What do you think's going to happen?
I'm going to go, I think I'm going to go Michigan 28-21, and partially saying that so my brother-in-law doesn't kill me.
Okay. There you go. Okay, you're picking Michigan. Sam, it's not even worth you picking the Iron Bowl since you've already decided Alabama's won the game. What do you think about Michigan and Ohio State?
Yeah, I'm going with Michigan. Defense wins championships. I think Michigan's got the better defense. It's at Ann Arbor. It's at the Big House. So I'm going to say Michigan 35, Ohio State 21, and then I'm going to add another prediction because my dad is a North Carolina State alum, and so this is the Wolfpack and Tar Heel weekend as well, and I'm sure Dad and I will be watching that game too.
Okay.
And
who's going to win that one?
I think Wolfpack's going to take it. Wolfpack's been kind of on a roll lately. I think Wolfpack. It's going to be a close game. I think the Wolfpack's going to take that one 28-24.
Okay. Now, I got to ask you, Sam, who do you think is going to win Boise State and Air Force? I'm not sure how good a year Boise State's having this season.
I think Boise State is 500 right now, unless they lost the last Saturday. I don't remember if they did or not. So they haven't been having a typical Boise State year. But I think the game is at Boise State, and Air Force is reeling. just a bit. And before I say that, I do want to say this. I know Air Force Academy alumni and fans are kind of fickle. And they were spoiled by the Fisher DeBerry years. They really were. And they expect the same from Troy Calhoun as the Fisher DeBerry years. And as crazy as it may sound for me to say this, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there in the ether, and people can say whatever they want to about it. But I'm going to tell you that this 3-game losing streak, including the loss to Army, which prevented them from winning the Commander-in-Chief trophy, it's got Troy Calhoun on the hot seat again. And if this season does not turn around, I'm going to tell you, there's going to be some people on the Air Force Academy side, they're going to be calling for his scalp, even with a winning record. So, but that being said, I believe the game's at Boise State. I know Air Force normally struggles with Boise State, so I'm going to say Boise State's going to win a close one. Let's say it's going to be 21-18 Boise State.
Okay. Okay, Richard, which game are you going to watch? We know you're interested in Michigan, Ohio State. Did you give us a score on that?
Oh, I think I said I actually wait, I changed my mind. I changed my mind on that one. 37-21 Michigan. I changed my mind.
Okay. Well, you know, SMU is an 18-point favorite over Navy on Saturday. I didn't realize it was going to be that big a challenge for them.
SMU.
And the Mountain West Air Force is Boise State's a 6.5-point favorite. And Boise State 6-5 on the season. Steve, why don't you close up with which game is your favorite this weekend? What do you think is going to happen?
A couple big games. And I got a chance to talk with Ross Tucker before the game on Thursday night, and talked to him. He's going to be calling the Nebraska-Iowa game, so I'm interested in that one. That's going to be a 4-2 drudging by Nebraska. They're going to score probably a total of 6 points between the two of those, so that'll be interesting. Now, Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan's going to win this ball game handily. I think they're going to take Ohio State. They're going to make a statement that will allow their coach to come back and coach in the playoff. So I'm going to say 35-14 Michigan in that game, and they're going to dominate that game at all areas of that contest for sure.
Very good.
And I got to disagree. Troy Calhoun is not on any hot seat. Not even a chance. We want him to be. We'd like to see him on a hot seat that's catapulted to the moon. Yes, but he's not on.
Well, Sam's got to get his fan club energized.
I just wanted to get the chatter going. That's all.
Yeah, no, it's not
going.
It's not on.
Yeah, those remarks are of Sam Houston.
And that's my favorite thing about Sam, Ken, his that he has to get his little shot in.
Yeah, we missed Sam. Sam missed his opportunity after the win over Air Force. But
Man, I missed it. We had our own little private little huddle, but yeah, I missed it.
You know, I'll tell a little with General Milley, just retired. When Army, and maybe Steve, you were at this. You know, when they went to the White House and they went to the Pentagon afterwards. And it was a big pep rally for the Army football team in the courtyard, and all the senior Army leadership was there. And General Milley got up and spoke and said all the rah-rah stuff. And then he said, you know, guys, a year from now, a lot of you are going to be deployed all over the world, and you're going to be damn glad those Air Force and Navy pilots are flying over your heads.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I told General Milley that when he's at graduation. I always tell that story, and kind of sums up, you know, Academy football. They're all going to serve together in the U.S. military on frontline assignments all over the world. Not too long after graduation.
It is funny. I'm looking at some of my coins in here, and I got a lot of them, and I've got several coins that were given to me by squadron commanders who were Air Force Academy grads, you know, F-16 pilots, A-10 pilots, and whatever. And I've even got a rendering of the Russian control tower in Afghanistan in Bagram, done by an Air Force Academy grad that I smoked a lot of cigars with, and he actually drew that on my behalf and presented it to me framed before I left Afghanistan. So it is a true statement. You know, we really are thankful once we're in uniform and we're doing our mission and we're in our joint assignments and we're doing our work together, and we're focusing on a common enemy and a common objective and a common mission. We can still agree that we're all on the same team, except for the day we play each other, in the field of friendly strife.
In college football, absolutely, it's one team at the end of the day. And I want to thank everybody for participating. We'll have another episode next week, and that's right before the Army Navy Media Day that I'll be at on Wednesday up in Foxborough, and we'll have interviews and we'll have the talks. And I know everybody up in New England is very excited about hosting the Army Navy game this year. So say thank you to Richard Miller for calling in from Florida.
Thank you. My pleasure, Ken.
And Sam Houston calling in from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, I know I've been a little sporadic this year. I've had challenges, and then, last week just flat out forgot about it, and I apologize, but it's so good to be back in the huddle, and I promise I'm not going to miss another one this season.
Okay. And Jack McGuirk calling in from Pelham, my colleague. I got to talk to you. We got to make up a show maybe tomorrow. But thank you so much for calling in. Good insight. And Steve Shalou calling in from South Jersey and the class of 92. Steve, we appreciate it. We always appreciate visiting your tailgate.
Looking forward to the tailgate up in Foxborough, and I just want to reach out just to say to everybody, reach out to somebody over the Thanksgiving holiday, tell them you love them, and just tell them you're thinking about them, because you don't know whether or not what thoughts they have going on in their heads. So that one phone call can make a difference in a life. So reach out, tell somebody you love them that you haven't told in a while. They'll definitely appreciate it. Unless it's your ex-wife, don't do that.
Well, I have to reiterate your comment, Steve, with passing my wife about just a month ago, how many kind comments, calls, texts, messages I've received, so many from the Army football team, and what a difference that's made. And I just want to say again, thank you for your service, and happy Thanksgiving to all members of the U.S. military, especially those who cannot make it home this year because they are serving domestically or overseas, and for representing us overseas. We know the Navy's got a lot of deployed ships, 2 aircraft carrier battle groups in the Middle East, and Army's got soldiers in 100 countries, and Air Forces and bases around the world, and Coast Guard and Marine Corps are all out there too on the front lines defending America and defending democracy. So we say thank you and happy Thanksgiving to all members of the U.S. military, and we'll get set, as we're going to have a lot of fun over the next 2 weeks prepping for the Army-Navy game that will be played in Foxborough, and for Army the chance to win the Commander-in-Chief Trophy. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thanks for our team here, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Happy Thanksgiving. Night.